Silence is often misunderstood as the absence of something. Many think of it as emptiness, a void, or a lack of sound. Yet in reality, silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is full of reflection, full of truth, and full of clarity. When you allow silence to be present, it becomes a mirror that shows you what is truly there. It reveals to you the unfiltered image of your mind, your emotions, and your inner state. Unlike the physical mirrors that reflect your outward appearance, silence reflects the inner dimensions that words and actions often conceal. The first thing you notice when you enter silence is restlessness. Your thoughts, like ripples on water, appear one after the other without end. You may sit quietly and suddenly realize how noisy the mind truly is. Every memory, every plan, every doubt begins to rise. This is why many people avoid silence, because silence does not allow distraction. It strips away the noise outside, only to reveal the noise within. The mirror of silence shows you the patterns you run from, the emotions you suppress, the stories you tell yourself. But if you do not turn away, if you stay, silence begins to change its quality. Once the initial storm of thoughts passes, you begin to notice subtler layers. The mirror grows clearer. Instead of being overwhelmed by thought, you begin to see thought as movement. Instead of being consumed by emotions, you begin to witness emotions as energy. This witnessing is the gift of silence. It creates a distance between what you are and what you are experiencing. The reflection shows you that you are not the thoughts, you are not the emotions. You are the one who is aware of them. In this way, silence becomes the greatest teacher. It is not a teacher that uses words, but one that uses presence. When you look into the mirror of silence, it does not lie to you. It does not flatter you. It does not tell you what you want to hear. It shows you as you are. And while this may be uncomfortable, it is also liberating, because only by seeing clearly can you begin to transform. Only by knowing the truth of your current state can you move beyond it. Many seek answers in books, in teachers, in philosophies, and while all these can be supportive, the mirror of silence is always available. It does not cost anything. It requires no external authority. It only requires the courage to stop, to listen, and to face what is revealed. The problem is not that silence does not speak, but that most are unwilling to listen. In silence, the ego loses its grip because the ego thrives on noise, on distraction, on comparison. Silence threatens the ego because in silence there is no performance, no mask to wear. There is only the unfiltered presence of what is. As the mirror continues to reflect, something deeper becomes visible. Beneath the turbulence of the mind and the shifting waves of emotion, there is a stillness that does not move. It is always there, though often hidden. This stillness is not created by silence, it is revealed by silence. It is the foundation of your being, the ground on which all thoughts and feelings come and go. When you encounter this stillness, the mirror becomes transparent. Instead of reflecting distortion, it reflects clarity, and in that clarity, you begin to recognize your essence. This is why silence is considered sacred in so many traditions. Because silence does not merely show you the surface, it takes you inward. It leads you from the noise of the world into the depth of your own being. In silence, you begin to see the futility of clinging to passing forms, the futility of chasing after endless desires. The mirror shows you how much of your suffering is self-created, born from identification with what is temporary. And at the same time, it shows you the freedom that comes from resting in what is unchanging. Silence also reflects relationships. When you are silent with another, you notice things words cannot cover. You see gestures, energies, subtle expressions. In the absence of constant talking, you begin to sense more. The mirror of silence does not only reveal your own inner state, but also the state of those around you. It allows for deeper connection because you are no longer distracted by the surface noise of communication. Silence reveals sincerity. It shows whether presence is authentic or hollow. In a world that glorifies constant movement and endless noise, silence has become rare. Yet this rarity is what makes it powerful. To enter silence is to step out of the collective current of distraction and to face yourself directly. And when you do, the mirror cannot be broken. Whatever it shows honestly. Sometimes it shows wounds that need healing. Sometimes it shows strength you did not know you had. Sometimes it shows the illusions you cling to. But always it shows reality. And in that reality, there is wisdom waiting to be seen. Silence as a mirror is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced. Because in silence, there is no judgment. There is only reflection. What you do with that reflection is your choice. You can ignore it and continue as before, or you can allow it to guide you toward transformation. The mirror does not force. It only reveals. It is your willingness to look deeply that determines the depth of what you will find. Life constantly places before us quiet examinations. They are not written on paper, nor are they graded with marks, yet their results define the very quality of our existence. These are the unseen trials, the subtle challenges that ask us what we truly value, what we are willing to protect, and what we are prepared to sacrifice. The test of value is not something one encounters only once. It appears again and again, disguised in daily decisions, in relationships and ambitions, and in the silent dialogue we hold with ourselves. When we speak of value, we must first understand that value is not inherited from others, it is not dictated by the crowd, and it is not confined to material possession. Value is a mirror of our inner clarity. What you choose to value shows what you choose to become. For one person, value may rest in external achievement, status, or recognition. For another, it may live in discipline, simplicity, or the cultivation of inner peace. The test arises when the world presents conflicting options, when you must decide which path holds the weight of meaning and which one is merely an illusion dressed in glitter. The test of value often comes through temptation. A voice whispers, "Take the shortcut, nobody will know." Another suggests, "Compromise your principles, just this once, for the sake of gain." At such moments, the question is not about the reward itself. The real examination is about whether your principles outweigh your desires. Do you stand with what you claim to value, or do you trade it away when the pressure arrives? These are the silent tests that reveal the depth of your character. But value is not only tested in temptation, it is also tested in loss. When something you hold dear is stripped away, the hidden structure of your values is revealed. Do you collapse because your foundation was built only on possession? Or do you remain steady because your worth is anchored in something deeper? Loss unmasks illusions. If you valued only appearances, then when they vanish, emptiness remains. If you valued growth, resilience, and wisdom, then loss itself becomes a teacher, not a destroyer. The test of value, therefore, is not whether you avoid loss, but how you endure it and what you extract from it. There are also tests of value in silence. These are the moments when no one is watching, when no applause can be heard, when your actions will never be recorded or praised. Do you still choose discipline, honesty, and effort when the world does not demand it of you? The unseen decisions shape the unseen parts of your spirit. If you value integrity, then even in solitude you will act in accordance with it. If you value truth, then you will hold it without needing validation. This is why silence is often the most honest examiner, for it strips away the performance and shows the essence of what is really valued. The test of value also reveals itself in endurance. It is easy to speak of what you value, easy to commit in moments of enthusiasm, but the true measure comes with time. Can you sustain discipline not for days, but for years? Can you remain faithful to your principles when fatigue, disappointment, or monotony arrive? The path of endurance is not glamorous, but it is here where values crystallize into strength. Without consistency, value is only a declaration. With consistency, value becomes a way of life. Another layer of this test lies in how you treat others. If you claim to value respect, do you extend it only to those who agree with you, or also to those who oppose you? If you claim to value compassion, does it dissolve when someone inconveniences you? The relationships you nurture, the patience you show, the words you choose, all of these expose the authenticity of your values. To value wisdom is to embody humility. To value strength is to master control over yourself, not over others. These everyday interactions are quiet examinations that often weigh more than the grand, dramatic tests we imagine. The test of value also asks whether you can distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. The urgent often screams loudly. Deadlines, demands, fleeting pleasures. The important, however, whispers. Self-development, health, relationships, integrity. Many fail this test because they sacrifice what is valuable for what is immediate. They spend themselves on things that appear pressing but fade quickly while neglecting what nourishes the core of life. To recognize what is valuable is to train perception, to sharpen awareness, to refuse the deception of urgency over essence. Every individual will face crossroads where values collide. One path may offer comfort, another growth. One may provide recognition, another truth. These crossroads do not announce themselves with signs, but they carry immense weight. Your decision at such moments defines the direction of your life far more than circumstances ever could. You cannot avoid the test of value. You can only prepare for it by clarifying what truly matters to you before the trial arrives. And so, the test of value is not about the world's judgment, but about the quiet measure of your own being. It is about standing firm in temptation, steady in loss, honest in silence, patient in endurance, compassionate in relationships, and wise in discernment. It is not a single examination with a final result, but a continual unfolding of choices that reflect who you are becoming. Every decision, every reaction, every alignment of thought and action is part of this lifelong test that determines the true weight of your existence. By power is not something that is merely handed over or taken by force. It is something that transforms when the awareness within a person changes. For most of life, people are conditioned to see power as external, as if it lies in titles, positions, wealth, or control over others. This view creates a constant chase, an endless pursuit to capture something that always seems to slip away. But the true shift of power begins the moment one turns inward, when the definition of power changes from external dominance to internal stability. The human mind is constantly caught in cycles of comparison, judgment, and fear of loss. When someone builds their sense of strength on the shifting sands of these external markers, they remain fragile no matter how high they climb. This fragility is revealed when circumstances change, when wealth disappears, when recognition fades, when control slips. It is at these moments that one discovers whether they had power or merely the illusion of it. The real shift happens when a person no longer anchors themselves to these unstable sources, but instead finds the immovable center within. This inner center does not arrive by accident. It is cultivated by discipline, by stillness, by learning to observe the fluctuations of the mind without being dragged by them. In the beginning, silence feels uncomfortable, almost like weakness. The urge to act, to defend, to prove oneself appears stronger than the willingness to remain still. Yet, the longer one practices, the more evident it becomes that silence is not weakness but clarity, not absence but presence. Power begins to shift when a person realizes that stillness is not the absence of action, but the mastery of it. In society, people are taught that influence equals strength. But true influence does not require force. When a calm person enters a room, the atmosphere changes. Their steadiness is felt without them needing to raise their voice. This is the quiet form of power that cannot be purchased or inherited. It is born from alignment between thought, word, and action. The moment that alignment is broken, power leaks away because inconsistency exposes inner instability. The shift, then, is not about controlling others, but about mastering oneself so deeply that nothing external can pull one away from balance. When someone is dominated by desires, fears, and attachments, their energy scatters. The world dictates how they feel, where their attention flows, and what they chase. This scattering is the hallmark of weakness. To reclaim that energy is to redirect it inward, to consolidate it, to let go of the illusions that drain it. Once gathered, the same energy that was once fragmented becomes focused, and focused energy becomes unshakable power. There is also another layer to this shift. Power changes when one learns the art of non-resistance. The tendency of the mind is to fight everything that does not match its expectations. This fighting consumes strength, leaving exhaustion in its wake. But when resistance is replaced with understanding, when situations are met with acceptance rather than opposition, energy is preserved. This does not mean surrendering in the sense of defeat. It means recognizing that fighting reality wastes life, while moving with it allows for transformation. In this way, the person who seems soft actually becomes stronger than the one who constantly resists. The shift of power is subtle. It does not announce itself with noise or demand recognition. It is a quiet evolution, often invisible to others, yet deeply felt by the one experiencing it. At first, it might seem like nothing has changed on the outside. The same routines, the same responsibilities, the same world continue. But within, the ground is different. Reactions are no longer automatic. Triggers no longer dictate behavior. The mind no longer commands blindly. Instead, awareness takes the lead, and with awareness comes choice. To have choice in each moment is the essence of freedom, and freedom is the essence of power. Over time, this shift becomes evident even to others. The one who used to be disturbed easily now remains calm under pressure. The one who once sought validation now moves independently of praise or blame. The one who used to fear loss now acts without clinging. This transformation is not a mask, but a genuine reorientation of energy. The external world sees only the calmness, but the root of it lies in the inner mastery that no one else can touch. The shift of power is not about taking something away from another. It is about withdrawing the energy that was scattered across illusions and reclaiming it into one's own center. The more one practices, the less dependent they become on what is unstable. And the less dependent they are, the free they become. This freedom radiates as confidence, not the type built on arrogance, but the type that needs no explanation. It is felt rather than spoken. Such power is not easily shaken by the ups and downs of life. It does not disappear when circumstances change, because it was never rooted in circumstances to begin with. This is the kind of power that transforms a person's way of moving, speaking, and relating to the world. It is not about being above others, but being above one's own limitations. It is not about bending the world to one's will, but flowing with it in such a way that obstacles turn into opportunities. The shift of power is ultimately a shift of perception. What once seemed important loses its weight. What once created fear loses its grip. What once demanded struggle loses its hold. The battlefield that was once outside moves within, and in that inner battlefield, victory is no longer about conquering others, but about conquering oneself. Clarity does not arrive when the mind is overcrowded. It cannot be summoned when thoughts are piled on top of each other, when emotions compete for attention, and when noise fills every corner of our inner and outer world. Just as water appears muddy when disturbed, the mind becomes clouded when there is no space to breathe, no silence to settle, and no pause to observe. If you wish to see clearly, you must allow the sediment to fall to the bottom, leaving the water calm and transparent. Space is what gives clarity room to reveal itself. Most people live in environments and mental states that are too crowded. They pack their days with constant activity, their minds with endless distraction, and their hearts with unprocessed emotions. In this crowdedness, there is no room for insight, just as a cluttered room makes it difficult to move freely. A cluttered mind prevents perception from flowing naturally. When you create space, whether in your environment, in your schedule, or in your thoughts, you are not losing anything. You are making room for clarity to arise. Space is not emptiness in the negative sense. It is not a void of absence, but a presence of possibility. When you enter a room with minimal objects, the room does not feel lifeless, it feels open. That openness allows your breath to slow down, your body to relax, and your senses to settle. The same principle applies to the inner world. When there is space inside, you begin to notice things that were hidden by constant noise. You notice the rhythm of your breathing, the subtle sensations of your body, the fleeting movements of your thoughts. In that noticing, clarity emerges. The reason many people struggle with clarity is because they equate business with importance. They believe that constant activity means progress and stillness means stagnation. But this belief is misleading. A machine that runs without pause will eventually overheat and break down. A human being who runs without pause will eventually burn out and lose direction. Space does not stop progress, it refines it. By creating pauses, you align your actions with wisdom instead of compulsion. You allow yourself to choose instead of react, to see instead of stumble blindly. Clarity requires distance. When you hold something too close to your eyes, you cannot see it clearly. Only by creating space between yourself and the object do its contours and details appear. The same applies to your experiences, your emotions, and your thoughts. When you are entangled within them, everything feels overwhelming. But when you step back, when you create even a little space, you begin to see patterns, causes, and effects. You realize that what felt permanent is actually passing, that what felt chaotic is actually part of a rhythm. Distance is not detachment in the sense of coldness. It is perspective in the sense of wisdom. Creating space is not always comfortable. Silence can feel confronting because it removes distractions and forces you to meet yourself. Many resist this silence because they fear what they might find when the noise is gone. Yet, it is precisely in that silence that truth appears. When you stop running from yourself, you begin to see what has been guiding you unconsciously all along. The act of sitting quietly, of not filling every gap with stimulation, is a practice of courage. Through that courage, Clarity arises not as something you force, but as something that naturally reveals itself. Think of a garden. If it is overgrown with weeds, no matter how much you plant, the flowers will struggle to bloom. The soil must be cleared, space must be made, and only then can growth happen freely. Your mind is like that garden. If it is overgrown with unnecessary thoughts, with worries, with old stories, clarity cannot grow. By removing what does not serve you, by allowing openness, you prepare the ground for insight. This process is not about adding more, but about subtracting what is unnecessary. Space also reveals priorities. When the mind is crowded, everything feels equally urgent and equally important. This creates confusion, stress, and hesitation. But when there is space, you can see what truly matters. You can distinguish the essential from the non-essential, the meaningful from the trivial. Clarity is not about having all the answers. It is about knowing what deserves your energy and attention. And this discernment comes only when there is enough space to recognize it. In relationships, space brings understanding. When you are caught up in reaction, in defensiveness, or in immediate emotion, words are often spoken that cloud the truth. But when you allow a pause, when you step back instead of stepping forward, clarity about the other person's perspective arises. Space between words allows deeper listening. Space between emotions allows compassion to grow. In this way, space does not separate, it connects more genuinely. Clarity through space is also physical. The body, too, needs space to move freely, to stretch, to breathe. When tension accumulates, when the muscles are contracted, the body feels heavy and clouded. But through movement, through releasing what is stuck, space is restored in the physical structure, and the mind follows. This is why practices like walking, stretching, or mindful breathing are so powerful. They create physical space that translates into mental clarity. The deeper meaning of space is not merely about emptiness in your environment, but about spaciousness in your awareness. When you recognize that awareness itself is vast, that thoughts are only clouds passing through the sky of your mind, you no longer become trapped by them. Clarity comes not from controlling every thought, but from resting in the spaciousness that holds them all. From this place, perspective is natural, wisdom is natural, and peace is natural. Choice is the silent architect of human destiny. At first, it appears as something ordinary, something woven into the fabric of daily life. Yet beneath its surface lies a force so powerful that it can reshape entire realities. Every path walked, every relationship nurtured, every outcome reached, they all emerge from the unseen current of decisions made both consciously and unconsciously. To awaken to choice is to realize that one is not drifting helplessly in the river of existence, but holding, even if lightly, the oar that directs its flow. The unawakened life often moves on patterns, conditioned responses passed down by family, society, or the restless mind. In this state, choices are not truly choices but repetitions. They come from habit, from fear, from the desire to conform or avoid pain. Such decisions, though they carry the illusion of agency, are in reality shadows of the past echoing into the present. The awakening begins when awareness pierces this illusion and recognizes the subtle moment before action. The space where thought arises and intention can be reshaped. Choice is not always about grand moments, though it reveals itself most clearly in them. It often lives in the quiet intervals, choosing patience instead of anger, silence instead of noise, discipline instead of indulgence. These small decisions accumulate, layering upon each other, forming character, identity, and direction. They are like drops of water that, over time, carve valleys into stone. To awaken is to see that the small is not separate from the great, that the smallest choices ripple into the largest transformations. The difficulty of choice lies not in its existence, but in the weight of responsibility it brings. When one awakens to choice, excuses dissolve. No longer can blame be easily cast outward onto circumstance or other people. The awakened individual recognizes that every step forward or backward is authored within. This realization can be unsettling, for it removes the comfort of passivity. Yet it also bestows freedom, the freedom to redirect, to unlearn, to create anew. Within the human mind, there is a constant dialogue, a stream of thoughts urging, doubting, persuading. To choose consciously is to step out of this turbulence, even for a brief moment, and ask, is this thought mine or is it borrowed? Is this decision an echo of fear or is it the voice of clarity? In that pause, awareness sharpens. It is there, in the stillness before the leap, that choice transforms from reaction to creation. Often, People believe that awakening means choosing only light, joy, or certainty. But choice is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about meeting life with clarity. Sometimes the awakened choice is to endure discomfort, to face truth, to walk into the unknown rather than remain in the familiar. Growth requires stepping beyond the cage of comfort, and only an awakened chooser has the courage to open that door willingly. Choice also reveals the nature of alignment. When decisions flow from scattered desires, they conflict and create fragmentation. But when choices are made from an inner center, a place of alignment between thought, body, and spirit, then even the most difficult path can be walked with stability. This alignment is not given, it is cultivated, like a flame protected against the wind. Each conscious choice strengthens it, and each unconscious one weakens it. There is also a profound connection between choice and energy. Every decision directs energy towards something, like water channeled into different streams. To choose anger is to pour energy into conflict. To choose gratitude is to feed harmony. To choose silence is to conserve power that would otherwise be scattered in meaningless noise. Once one awakens to this, choices are no longer casual. They are seen as acts of energy investment, shaping both the inner state and the outer reality. The awakening of choice strips away illusions of fate as an external force. Fate is not the rigid script people fear it to be, but the unfolding of patterns created by countless decisions layered together. To awaken is to step into authorship, to understand that while circumstances may not always be chosen, responses always are. And it is the response, not the circumstance, that carves the trajectory of a life. This awakening is not a single event, but a continuous unfolding. Each day offers moments that test awareness, the temptation to react unconsciously, the urge to slip back into old habits, the comfort of sleepwalking through existence. To remain awake to choice requires vigilance, not the kind that is tense or fearful, but the kind that is steady and rooted, like a mountain aware of the winds that pass over it. Choice, in its awakened form, becomes less about control and more about harmony. It is not about bending life entirely to personal will, but about listening deeply, aligning with truth, and responding with intention. It is the art of dancing with reality rather than resisting it blindly. The awakened chooser does not cling to outcomes, but invests fully in the present act, knowing that the act itself is the seed of future outcomes. When one awakens to choice, life ceases to feel like a chain of accidents. Each moment is revealed as an opportunity to direct energy, to express values, to shape both inner being and outer reality. The recognition that I choose shifts the weight of life from chaos to coherence. This does not mean that storms will not come, but it means that even in the storm, there is the clarity of steering, the dignity of authorship, the subtle yet profound power of being awake to every decision as it arises in a world that glorifies constant movement, endless striving, and the visible display of progress. The idea of non-action may appear counterintuitive, even weak. Yet, there is a timeless wisdom in the art of restraint, in the ability to remain still when every impulse urges you to move, to react, to prove. True strength does not always reveal itself in what it is done, but often in what is withheld. Non-action is not laziness, nor is it avoidance. It is the conscious decision to refrain, to allow space for things to unfold, to honor timing rather than force it. When you act out of impulse, you are often acting from a place of insecurity or fear. The restless mind tells you that something must be done immediately, that silence is dangerous, that waiting is weakness. But look closely, and you will see that the greatest damage in life often comes from rushed decisions, hasty words, and unmeasured steps. The discipline of non-action protects you from yourself, from the mind's insistence that everything must be solved, explained, or conquered right now. It allows clarity to surface, like still water revealing the reflection hidden beneath. Non-action is a strength because it demands mastery over desire and control over ego. To refrain when you could act is to declare that you are not ruled by external circumstances. Imagine an insult thrown your way. The instinct may be to respond immediately, to defend yourself, to prove the other wrong. Yet the person who embodies non-action does not waste energy in unnecessary battles. They understand that reaction is a form of surrender, that to be provoked is to give away power. The one who does not react holds the higher ground because their peace cannot be disturbed by another's noise. There is power in waiting. A seed placed in the soul does not sprout faster by being pulled at every day. The river does not carve valleys by rushing. but by flowing patiently over time. The strongest forces in nature demonstrate the wisdom of non-action. They move when the time is right and remain still when stillness is called for. To align with this rhythm is to recognize that life is not always asking you to push, but sometimes to pause. In that pause, energy gathers, insights form, and the right path becomes clear. Non-action is also an act of trust. It is the recognition that not everything requires your interference, that the universe carries its own intelligence, that the unfolding of events has its own order. When you intervene in everything, you disrupt the balance. But when you allow, when you hold back, you participate in harmony rather than opposition. This does not mean passivity or indifference. It means acting only when action arises from clarity rather than compulsion. Strength in non-action is also about the conservation of energy. Life demands a vast amount of energy, and most people scatter theirs through constant motion and endless reaction. They act when it is unnecessary, they speak when silence would serve them better, they resist when acceptance would bring more peace. The one who practices non-action conserves their energy like a warrior waiting for the right moment. And when the time comes, their action is sharp, precise, and unstoppable because it has been reserved for the moment of true necessity. Consider the storms of life. There are times when chaos surrounds you, when everything feels uncertain, when decisions seem urgent. The common impulse is to do something, anything, to regain a sense of control. But often the wisest response is non-action. To remain centered while the storm passes. To wait, to breathe, to endure without unnecessary movement. Because storms end, and if you move recklessly during them, you may cause greater harm than the storm itself. Non-action is also the root of inner silence. When you choose not to react, not to rush, not to force, you create a space of calm within yourself. In that silence, you can observe without being consumed, you can feel without being overwhelmed, you can think without being clouded. The mind becomes a still pond rather than a raging river, and in that stillness, your true strength emerges, not as a performance, but as a presence. To cultivate strength in non-action, one must develop patience. Patience is not simply waiting, but waiting without agitation, waiting without resentment, waiting without the need to control the outcome. It is a form of discipline, a training of the mind to remain stable amidst uncertainty. Patience transforms non-action from passivity into wisdom because it is not the absence of movement, but the mastery of timing. The paradox of non-action is that it often leads to the most powerful action. When you refrain from reacting immediately, when you allow time to reveal its truths, you are able to act with greater precision. The archer does not release the arrow before pulling the bow to its full tension. The warrior does not strike until the opening is clear. The mind trained in non-action does not waste energy on what does not matter, and therefore has more energy for what truly does. Strength in non-action also requires letting go of the need to prove yourself. So much of human behavior is driven by the desire to be seen, to be validated, to be acknowledged. But when you are secure within yourself, you no longer need to prove anything through constant action. Your strength is not diminished by waiting. Your worth is not questioned by silence. Your presence is not weakened by restraint. In fact, your silence speaks louder than any hurried words. Your stillness radiates more power than restless movement. Your non-action holds more authority than forced effort. When you recognize that not every moment requires your hand, not every conflict requires your voice, not every situation requires your control, you begin to embody a deeper kind of strength. The kind of strength that is unshaken, the kind of strength that is reserved, the kind of strength that moves only when necessary. This is the strength of non-action, a strength that does not seek attention, but commands it through presence. It is a strength that does not waste itself in noise, but gathers itself in silence, ready to move only when the movement truly matters,